Pinellas County, which is where I live. And apparently their parks department had, several years before, had bought like this inflatable movie screen, like three stories tall, right? And they use it about half a dozen times a year. But for 51 weeks out of the year, basically, it sits in a warehouse. Says, well, what if you let the creative community know they had access to this movie screen? Folks would go, wow, you mean I can do movies in the park, I can do movies in the neighborhood, I can do movies on my roof? Sure. I'm like, okay. So again, maybe one of the things we ought to do is like, how do we allow them to play with some of our toys? I think this could be done. You know, make a colleague nervous, but it can be done. And then let's do this. So you have this meeting, you get some good stuff out of it. At the very least, you're going to learn some interesting stuff about what's going on in your city, right? And then, you know, hopefully there's some natural alignment. We've got a couple ways to work together. And then they go off and they continue to do their stuff, right? And then a few months later, you say, you know what? Hey, you know that meeting we had back in December? Let's do that again. And this time, I want you to bring a friend. Because you knew who the obvious co-creators were, right? But these co-creators absolutely know who the next generation is out there. And you know, they're not even on your radar yet. You need to get to know these folks. Because again, most of the time these folks oftentimes look at you guys as an impediment to move around as opposed to somebody to work with. And if you do that, you start out with half a dozen of these folks in the first meeting, 6 becomes 12, 12 becomes 24. At the end of a year, and for the cost of a couple hours of your time and a few cups of coffee, you might have a couple dozen co-creators aligned that look at you as a potential partner, and again, instead of as an impediment that they have to move around. That's a great place to start, and it's a really simple one. You could do that next week. Let's bring them together, have a conversation, learn a little bit more, and how do we support each other. That's simple, and could be that, and I think that is a very fertile ground for us to move forward.
Well, let me just say something.
Sure.
Because I find that there are a lot of very creative people, but the way they present themselves turns most council people off. For instance, I think of A.C. Pulliam, who has wonderful ideas, but when he comes down, people don't like to hear what he has to say. And I think with creative people, that is very true. That
Yeah.
sometimes we see them, Jack Gergley is a brilliant engineer, but the way he presents it turns people off, and they don't want
Yeah.
to deal with it. But I think it's very important to realize that we
Right.
do that and try not to do it.
Exactly, because all we see is the piercings and the tattoos
Yes.
and those freaky earlobes go all the way down to here.
Whatever.
And we as the adults in the room need to be okay with that. Because again, oftentimes creative people are marching to a different drum.
Right, and they don't say things the way other
Right.
people do, and they don't try to.
And here's the thing. We often talk about wanting to be a more creative, more innovative city and be a more creative and innovative company, or as a council and all this stuff, and that's great. But the thing is when you invite creativity into the room, sometimes creativity is going to make some people a little nervous.
Yes.
And it can be edgy, and it can be uncomfortable.
Yes.
Again, we need to be okay with that. Because again, if we say, well, we want to get creative, but we want to get sort of safe creative over here. It's like, that's really not, no. What you're asking for is, I'd like to get just a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better. We'll talk a little bit more about that as well, but that's a very good point. Yeah, we need to be accepting of these folks because again, we want their help, right? And if they don't want to do it in quite the way that we would actually like, we need to figure out a way that to be okay as well. Because again, if we make it all about saying, we'd love to have you do it, but you have to do it our way, they're going to say, screw you, I'm going to go do it anyways. There. And again, then you lose that potential alignment, and you lose that opportunity to do that. We can figure this stuff out. All right, let's rethink some basics. And I've got a whole bunch of things, and this talks about rethink of way we think about sort of the problems. I want us to embrace the idea of temporary. Because temporary can absolutely be one of our best friends. When we talk about projects, and we've got a whole list of things, we're talking about big, expensive, semi-permanent kind of things, the kind of stuff that's going to last for a generation. And so oftentimes we get sort of fixated on those things. I think at the expense of the value and sort of the brilliance of temporary. And a great example of this comes from pedestrian-friendly Times Square. Have any of you folks been back in the last 9, 10 years now to Times Square and visited there since the transformation? Amazing transformation of that space. In the past when you went to Times Square, the one thing you wanted to do was stop and look around, right? But you really couldn't do that the way Times Square was previously designed. Because if you stopped on the sidewalk, you were going to get run over by a herd of New Yorkers. Take one step off the curb, you were going to get run over by a cab, right? So about 10 years ago now, the city, Mayor Bloomberg, did the extraordinary thing of closing off one of the busiest intersections in one of the busiest cities in the world and made it into a pedestrian-only zone. And it's absolutely brilliant, right? But when they first proposed this, there was a lot of blowback about this stuff. Locals were saying, are you crazy? You're going to bring traffic in Manhattan to a standstill. And the local business owners were screaming bloody murder. Man, you're going to kill our business. Mayor said, hold on, time out. We're going to do this on a temporary basis. If this doesn't work quite the way we'd hoped, we're going to be able to undo it fairly quickly. When they actually did it for the first time, it was really simple. They simply painted different directionals on the road. They brought in some simple flower boxes like you get at Lowe's or Home Depot. And they brought in some really inexpensive lawn furniture just to see if people would like it. And of course, people loved it. And within a matter of months, it was very evident that this was going to be a permanent change to Times Square. Now, I believe Bloomberg and his team had every intention that this was going to be permanent from the beginning. But in order to sell it to his community, he had to announce it as temporary, right? Because again, there's lots of people, there's lots of projects we know we'd like to do, but as soon as we announce them, we know there's going to be pushback, right? Because again, it's hard for people to imagine something they've never seen and never experienced before. And so their natural reaction is, no, we can't do that. So what if we did it and say, well, hold on, we're going to do this on a smaller, temporary basis to allow folks to come and get used to the idea and go, oh, this is pretty cool. Yeah, I'd be down for something like this on a permanent basis. Great. So temporary can absolutely be one of our best friends, and I think we sometimes forget that. So yeah, we may know that the plan takes us here. But if we announce all this stuff here, if we say, we're going to go there, it's like, man, that's going to be a lot for folks to deal with. What if we announce this first step here? It's smaller, but it gets us toward that. Temporary can absolutely be one of your best friends. How about stuff like this? This is in Boulder, Colorado. And then during the summer in their downtown, they encourage the local businesses to invest in these little parklets, right? So they actually design these really well. So like you see restaurants and shops will actually design some of this stuff, and they'll take a parking space or two, do something really creative with this. I think that's wonderful. So you can actually sit outside, it's good weather, there are people having a good time. And this is also kind of important as well. That when you do something like this, it somehow disabuses people of the notion that every downtown parking space is sacred, and thou shalt not touch a downtown parking space as well. Yeah, we need to get over that stuff here, and certainly on a temporary basis, that's a great way to do that. Or how about something like this? This is from New Zealand. This is a town called Tauranga, which is actually like the 5th largest city in New Zealand. And their council was doing a lot of redevelopment in their downtown. And when there's a lot of redevelopment going on, that means they got to pull a lot of stuff down, and there could be a lot of empty lots for a long period of time. It's like, okay, we got to focus here, and here, and here. Well, what they did is after they pulled down this one particular lot, instead of just letting it be an empty hole in the fabric of their community for several years, they said, you know what, let's bring in some containers. Let's do something kind of creative with this. And they modeled this after something that had been done in Christchurch, New Zealand, and they call this Our Place. And it's a container store, not the container store, it's a container shipping containers that created like pop-up retail and restaurants and stuff like that. And it's kind of brilliant. It's really well done. There's great places to sit, fun, interactive marketplaces and restaurants, and great places to just sort of sit and hang out. And again, they know this is going to come down eventually. So yes, there's an investment in some of the infrastructure that's there. But knowing that this would, I'd rather spend, some money today, a little bit of money today, to keep this from being just an open wound for 5 years while we're trying to get to this good stuff. So temporary can absolutely be one of our best friends. And we're talking about the Kmart site. We're thinking about that. What we do on a temporary basis, there for a short term, for a quarter, for a year, for 3 years, while something is actually happening. Temporary can absolutely be one of our best friends. And this is an interesting organization out of Dallas, Texas. They're called A Better Block. And what they do is they work with communities to come in and sort of envision what a different place might actually look like. And when they work with the community, they'll come in and they'll do like this sort of temporary sort of physical changes to a space. They'll bring in potted plants and flowers. They'll bring in like the street pianos, places to sit, pop-up retail. They'll paint different bike lanes, temporary bike lanes on the road, just to get people to envision what this might actually look like if we did this process, right? So again, people go, oh wow, this would be really great. So again, we can show them a very lovely drawing or a schematic like that. But again, people go, okay, it looks kind of interesting. But until they've actually gone down there and sat there and go, pretty cool. So again, helping people to envision something, where we want to lead them, we might have to take them on a journey that actually requires them to come and sit in something and go, okay, I believe it now. Believe, right? Well, folks, it's hard for folks to believe in something they've never been to or they've never experienced before. Maybe one of the things we want to be thinking about here is temporary allows them to get their feet wet and again, change the way they feel about a process. And sadly, this is the age that we live in. We actually need to rethink the way I think we approach security. And of course, Virginia Beach, that has put all of you cities all over the state, really all over the country, on a heightened, there's a different sense of priority and importance. And I totally get that. Security is incredibly important. Here's the thing, though. We tend to defer to certain groups that we think should be leading on the security conversation. We only talk about the police and first responders and sort of those experts. And I get that. They certainly have they have the expertise in a lot of this, and they should have a very strong voice in that process. But you know that old adage that says, if you're a hammer, then the whole world looks like a nail? Well, if your job is security, then the whole world tends to look like a security threat or a potential breach, right? And again, I don't want to live in something like that. And so a lot of times then the most overt security is stuff that looks like this, right? Guys walking around with submachine guns. And I get that there's a time and place, maybe that is necessary. You're traveling in international airports, you see that. Maybe there's a big event that's happening. You see lots of armed police, and you see policemen on horses and stuff like that. I get that. But here's the thing. This makes me nervous at the same time. I think this makes all of us kind of nervous. Like, oh, that's very great, we're happy to be here. But I see these guys go, should I be here? Because again, it does have that effect, right? Yes. So for our cities, security has to be prevalent, but it has to be mostly invisible. And that requires us thinking about this in a different way, right? Not just the most overt stuff. And again, I get why the police and security experts are going to lead us down this particular path. But other folks have a perspective on this, and other folks might have some interesting approaches to security. Like, how about the Arts Council? This is actually the Fremont Bridge Troll from Seattle. This is actually in an underpass in the Fremont neighborhood in Seattle. And this is about 25 years old. So about 25 years ago, there's this underpass in this neighborhood. And there was a lot of bad activity going on there underneath the underpass, especially at night, right? So the locals were contacting the police and saying, hey, we want more police, we want more drive-bys, we want more lighting, hey, help us out here. So while the police department is trying to figure out how to maybe make this happen, along comes of all organizations, the Arts Council, with this idea. It says, hey, how about if we put a troll underneath the bridge and scare away the bad guys? And that's exactly what they did. They put this troll under there, and this thing is huge. This is actually a full-size VW that is there in its hand. It is that big, right? So now people are coming because they want to see the troll. They'll come and they'll take pictures, they'll climb on the troll, and it's become sort of an attraction there. So now the neighborhood has the problem. It's like, there's all these tourists in my neighborhood. It's like, yeah, okay, but that's still better than the bad behavior that was going on here before. So sometimes the way to clean up the negative behavior is fill it with good behavior, better stuff. Let's have more things like that. So again, when was the last time we had asked the Arts Council for their perspective on a security problem? Because again, they don't see the problem in the same way, and their solution could be very different than the ones we might actually come up with. Or how about stuff like this? LED lighting. This is in downtown Columbus. There, again, an underpass. And most of the time, we'd all be pretty reluctant to walk underneath a bridge in a downtown at night. But because this light was pulsing, it was really beautiful, it literally pulled me in. It's like, wow, this is really cool. And again, this kind of stuff has become pretty inexpensive, comparatively speaking. The security sort of solution, the one-dimensional security solution to this is like, let's put the brightest fluorescent lights in there possible that even the cockroaches will flee from, right? And I guess that's safe, but it's hardly beautiful, and it's hardly inviting, and it hardly, creates an emotionally engaging place. This does. This accomplishes both. They're, I think, even better. So again, it's lighting, but it actually is lighting that actually is going to attract people to come in and be part of. It's like, hey, this is going on. And again, eyes of strangers, chasing away the bad activity. And this stuff, this is this glow rock material, right? So this is building material that actually absorbs light during the day there, and then at night it glows. So folks are using this to create pathways and line pathways and parking lots and all that kind of stuff to essentially create this sort of ambient light, and it's really kind of cool. So again, for very obvious reasons, we need trailways to be safe, but who says we can't make it more interesting and even beautiful there moving forward? There again, thinking about the problem in a different way. So security again is everybody's issue. And by the way, I'm going to go back to the dog park thing here as well, because again, dog parks are actually incredible. They do so many things really, really well. And oftentimes I believe that the conversation around security is not, people don't fully appreciate that. Because again, it becomes a locus of good, positive activity, and people are coming there again at all hours of the day and night. And again, it does create a safe zone, and it creates this whole halo effect of security around it. You know, we often have to sell folks, and I get there's an anti-dog park and dog constituency out there, and they complain about, oh, it's the noise, it's this, but we've never told them, by the way, this is good for your property values, and it's also increasing the safety in your neighborhood. And I bet we haven't tried to have thought of it that way. Okay, so but yeah, dog parks are actually, again, kind of amazing. And I want to back to the dogs. I want to talk a little bit about this because I think we need to rethink dogs. Bear with me. Now think about this. Have you seen more dogs in the airport lately? Yeah, we've seen a lot more dogs in the airport lately there as well. And lots of therapy dogs and lots of kind of stuff. Why? What's going on here? Well, in my research for my newest book, I came across a very interesting statistic that says there are a growing number of US cities where dogs now outnumber children in cities. Think about that for a minute. Think about how much of our public policy and how much of our thinking around cities has been built around this idea of parents with children, right? Now, I'm not saying we're going to stop doing that, but I think the new reality is that we're dealing with a lot of people with a lot of dogs, especially millennials and Gen Z. They have a very different relationship with their dogs, right? Because study after study shows that millennials are treating dogs like starter children, right? I mean, I say that, I say I'm a dog parent there as well. Most of us probably do. And certainly, millennials feel very differently about their dogs there. And I think, and part of our job, right, development directors, city managers, all of you guys, is attracting and retaining talent, right? Well, part of attracting and retaining talent is like, okay, what lifestyle things do they want? And we went through that whole creative class thing with Richard Florida, which is, looking at those folks, who are we trying to attract and what do they want? Well, they wanted outdoor green spaces, they wanted lots of activities, et cetera, et cetera. Now, they brought their dogs. So we need to be thinking about this stuff. And what was the interesting one is actually this is the Hydrant Club in downtown Las Vegas, right? Downtown Las Vegas is not the Strip. Downtown Las Vegas is where, the actual working part of the city is. And Zappos, the big the online shoe company that Amazon owns, moved their corporate headquarters into the old city hall, and they created this downtown campus. There are several thousand employees working downtown there. And Zappos is a dog-friendly office, but everybody wants to bring their dog all the time. So a lot of the employees were asking for, hey, we want good, we want an option for pet sitting, for a doggy daycare kind of thing. So this woman started this. Essentially, it's a private dog club, private dog park there in downtown Vegas called the Hydrant Club. And for you pay your membership fee, and every day you can drop your dog off there, and the dog has a great time there with other dogs. It's actually staffed there as well. If you need overnight boarding services, they have that as well. But this is not just a dog park. This is an economic development amenity, right? Because we're selling lots of stuff. We're selling place today. It's not just about the land deal. It's not just about the tax incentives. It's like, okay, because lots of places have land deals and tax incentives. Then the question is, well, what's the lifestyle going to be? Where are my people going to live? And if my people have dogs, and especially millennials, this is absolutely an economic development tool.
Yeah, and plus too, on that,
Yeah.
those millennials love traveling more because they're using the Airbnb everywhere.
Sure.
And so they're looking for something like
And traveling
that.
with their dogs is becoming more of a normal thing.
Yes,
More and more
yeah.
hotels are offering that, a dog-friendly hotel.
Yeah, Hotel Indigo in
Yeah.
Los Angeles, it was for pets
Yeah.
as well. So.
That's the new norm there as well. Dog parks are popping up all over the place. Last year, the Jacksonville Jaguars incorporated a dog park into their stadium. There as well. So yeah, you can come there, and so it's like a little beer garden there at the stadium. You're not in the game, but you can come. And there's all kinds of TVs, and you're just part of the stadium experience, and you're there with your dog. So yeah. Now this is interesting because we're seeing a lot of really good dog parks out there as well. This is in Henderson, Nevada, a really big dog park called the Heritage Bark Park. And of course it has some really cool public art. This is a guy his name is Barkules. This is really big. And of course because Nevada, you need some shade. So you have these sunshades there. And the dog, and this place again is huge. And the dogs even have their own splash pad. Kind of amazing, right? So again, this is an amenity. And we think, oh, it's for the dogs. No, it's really for the people, right? The dogs would be very happy, and basically a little thing like that. This is great. This is for us dog owners, us dog parents. We feel better about this. And again, when we feel better, we're happy, to be there. We're going to talk to other people. We're going to get to know them. This is brilliant.
Yes, and as you, on that point too, as we are in communities and now because of private fences, you know, our homes have private fences now, not like the old days with the porch and everybody knew the neighbors.
Yeah.
So, and so many people are
Breaks the ice.
separate.
Yeah.
This is something
Yeah.
along the lines of, you know, getting people in neighborhoods, just like for our city, the district, south,
Yeah.
central, north, there's so much separatism.
Yeah.
How do you get people from everywhere to come and enjoy it?
This is one of those ways. Now, I do recognize that there are some racial differences around dog ownership that I became very cognizant of as well. There's amongst African American families and Hispanic families, dog ownership is not treated the same way. And there was a time when dogs were literally weaponized against the African American community. So but part of that is also generational, right?
Yeah.
We're old enough to remember sort of that legacy of the civil rights era. I think the millennials, across the board, they're treating dogs, again, as starter children. So I think this is one of those sort of challenges that is sort of working its way out through time. But again, if we're trying to attract and retain these millennials, we need to be thinking about this kind of stuff.
Some of us were paper carriers before the leash law.
Yeah.
Different outlook.
Yeah.
So this is my littlest guy. This is Dobby. And for those of you who are Harry Potter fans will know the Dobby reference because of the years, the house elf, right? And again, like I said, I am a dog parent around that. And this sort of begs the question because we kind of recognize that people's relationship with their dogs does feel different than it did when we were kids or our parents' relationship with the dog, right? Our parents loved the dog, but the dog slept outside, right?
Yeah.
Now the dog sleeps in the bed with us, right? And the dog has it's very different there as well. So why is that? Well, what I think is manifesting is this, and this is actually something I'm writing about in the newest book. The dogs are filling a gap in our emotional infrastructure, right? There's something going on with us, that's not all good. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good stuff that's happening, but you know what? They talk about the epidemic of loneliness in this country. Yeah, we're hyper-connected on our devices and all this kind of stuff, but we're more alone than we've ever felt before. We're under more stress there, and the dogs are actually helping to alleviate that. The dog looks at us like we're the best, coolest person in the world. They're always happy to see us, right? And there's something medically, they say that petting a dog actually lowers your blood pressure and increases your serotonin levels. It's literally good for your health because the dog actually makes us get outside, makes us exercise a little bit more, makes us be social, right there in a way. So again, it's alleviating, it is filling some of the very, real gaps in our emotional infrastructure. Yes?
Especially in a lot of bad marriages, people stand together for years and years. So the dog helps with somebody.
So they need the dog.
In the house.
I get the dog. I get the dog.
So think about this. Think about this. Our collective job is to create a great place for people to live, right? In many ways, we're actually creating we support their emotional infrastructure. And if we want to help them be better people, we need to recognize it. Part of this is this canine infrastructure. And it seems silly, but the reality is like, well, wait, if we try to unpack why the dogs have become important, we go, okay, I get it. People are lonely, they're stressed. There's a lot of really good stuff that comes out of it.
There's a lot of good research that talk about the extension of life.
Yeah. Again, because you're not lonely, you feel better, you have a purpose to get up in the morning.
Right.
Yes. Your kids may have left there as well, but you have this creature that depends on you that is all, again, very happy to see you in the morning. There as well. So yeah.
I don't think that would be I got called 2 weeks ago if I could help them with a barking dog.
Yeah. Well,
Maybe if I had, dog parks where they live.
yes.
That
We
I
have a
would-
wonderful
Yeah,
Well,
because
everybody
part of
don't
that
live on that way.
is dog
That's what's in the
socialization.
south.
Well, there can be one there.
Hey, there's
So I
issues
could have
with
been able to
everything.
refer them to
Yes.
the dog park.
Yes, that would be a great way to do
Hey,
it.
give your neighbor this information.
Yeah.
So,
Maybe the dog was lonely.
but again, thinking about this as emotional infrastructure, not just for the dog, it's really for us. All right, let's rethink some other basic stuff around this. People watching. As human beings, we're actually endlessly fascinated with each other. It's kind of hardwired into our DNA. We watch other people, and we're entertained by that, right? But the way we've oftentimes designed our cities is we don't necessarily think about that. We're designing, because we're letting the, the transportation guys design sort of everything around our cities. So it's all about the car. So we oftentimes forget the simple value of people watching in all of this. So I was in Hawaii at the beginning of the year, and this is the Duke Kahanamoku statue that's there. Duke is one of a very famous Hawaiian. He's created the modern surfing there. He's an Olympian. Very cool. It's a great statue. And so, of course, there's lots of people coming up and they're taking pictures of the statue, and they're doing the selfie thing, and I was one of them, right? But I happened to notice, so after I took the photos, I'm looking at this, and I looked to the side, on both sides here, there was lots of this. There were these benches on both sides of the Duke statue there. And there's just lots of people sitting and watching the tourists, right? Because it's kind of entertaining. As people are there, they're posturing, they're doing all this kind of stuff. So again, people watching. And this, I think, is something that we oftentimes overlook. That the simple, where we put the benches. Like, don't put the bench facing the street and the parking lot. Turn it around so it's looking at the dog park. It's looking at the playground. It's looking at the ball fields, right? Or a great sunset, or just something. Where are those opportunities to increase people watching? That's really simple. It just requires us to, wait a minute. Okay, how do I do this? All right, let's add some benches over here. Let's add some of this. We create an opportunity for people to watch each other. This is an obvious one. This is in Wellington, New Zealand, which is there on the water in this sort of in their port area. And again, you can see lots of this industrial sort of stuff like that. Okay, and there's water. Well, what they did is they put up some scaffolding and basically let people jump into the water, right? And other people will watch them, and other sort of show-offs will jump up and will belly flop from 20 feet up in the air. More power to them. And again, it's entertainment. It's entertainment that the city doesn't have to pay for, right? It's deep enough that this is obviously, you can see that these are pilings that are going way down here, because this was actually an industrial wharf in the past. So it's pretty deep.
They have to sign the waiver.
No. Apparently not. It didn't look like any waivers were being signed by the people who were up here. So
They don't have American travel lawyers.
yeah. Well, but again, okay, the idea of people watching. Well, how about something like this? Muscle Beach, California, Venice Beach, right? Basically, what Muscle Beach has done is taken gym narcissism and turned it into an attraction, right? People lifting weights in the gym and all that stuff. It's like posing in the mirror. Well, yeah, and the thing is, like, we're kind of fascinated by that, but you can't really stare at somebody in the gym like that because that's just weird, right? Okay, so what they did, they moved this stuff outside. Those who want to show off, they're doing that, and those who want to watch, yeah, it's encouraged. So again, creating those opportunities to people watch around that. And I bet if we went back and looked, it's like, well, okay, where's the park? Let's do this. What's the downtown? How do we do that? How do we flip those things around and just increase that a little bit? By increasing that even a little bit, the place is going to feel better. Again, this is emotional infrastructure. Like, instead of the chair being here, what if we put it here? And now we can see each other. It could be that simple. Those are little fixes that we can absolutely do. Not next year, we do these tomorrow. Let's rethink some basics like color, right? Color matters. The color of a room can impact our mood and all this kind of stuff. There's all kinds of examples around the idea of the importance of color. And I was in Goleta, California, which is down near Santa Barbara. And they're showing me around their downtown. This is called Old Town. This is the historic Hispanic shopping district there in Goleta. And they're telling me about all these plans to redo the streetscape, to do the complete streets, and I'll change all this kind of stuff. It's like, okay, I'm looking around and I'm like, okay, what's going on here? And then I looked at this other building. I said, okay, what's going on with all of the brown here? It's like, and they said, well, one of the owners here, big owner, they painted their whole building brown. Then the next guy painted their whole building brown, and then it basically sort of caught on to the point where even the Wendy's looked like this. This is wrong, right? So we started calling this Old Town Brown, right? And I said to them, I appreciate that all that what you guys are trying to do there with all these changes and whatnot. But how about starting with a coat of paint? I mean, this is the Hispanic shopping district. This should be vibrant and lively and colorful, and it's not. It's like, man, that's the easy place to start before you start ripping up the road and trying to do all this other hard stuff. The power of a coat of paint. And I juxtapose that with this. This is not too far from where I live. This is Gulfport, Florida. And in some ways, I think it's the most colorful city in Florida. It's a very creative enclave. Lots of artists live there. And I think they're trying to outdo each other, outloud each other in terms of how bright they can make their buildings. So like in a little apartment like this, or a house like that, or another house like this. And to the point where even the manhole covers are getting in the act, right? That's pretty cool. So color absolutely does change the way we feel about a place, right? So again, and this is actually pretty cool. Check this out. This is Tirana, Albania. Now, Albania was on sort of the wrong side of the Iron Curtain during the Cold War, right? So in the late 90s, you know, as these countries are becoming independent from the then Soviet Union, Russia, there, and by independent that means you're free to pay your own bills at this point. So yeah, so what's happened in Albania? There's lots of failing infrastructure, as it were, and lots of these old